But the drum set to me is an orchestra. The heartbeat though of the drum set is snare drum, bass drum, one cymbal, and hi-hats. That's it. So I started, by the way, with a snare drum. I asked my father for, I said, can I have a drum set? He said, well, let's play this one drum. Let's just see what you do with that for a while, you know, before we get to the drum set. You know what I said? Okay. I was totally happy to have a snare drum. I had a snare drum for 1 year. Then I got a bass drum and one small cymbal that mounted in the top of the bass drum. And I think I got a hi-hat stand shortly after that. So that was my drum set for roughly, what, 4 or 5 years? So I didn't get any tom-toms until the age of 9. So in reference to the question that you asked me, in reference to dance band music, that can be pretty much anything. For example, that beat that I was playing, and I'm going to do this with malice, by the way. But the foot pattern is just that. Boom, 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 boom. One thing I had to figure out to do when I was still in my teens. In 1967, James Brown came out with a song called Cold Sweat. And halfway through that song, he said, can we get a drummer song? Now, prior to James Brown and Cold Sweat, if I played at a dance and it came time to take a drum solo, I had to figure out how to keep the dancers on the dance floor, because it was automatically assumed that when it comes time for the drummer to take a drum solo, everybody leaves, including the musicians on the stage. That was common for so many years. Well, I didn't want the audience to leave the dance floor. So I figured out a way to come up with different rhythms in the context of the song that we were playing for me to take a meaningful drum solo so they would stay on the dance floor. But when we started doing Cold Sweat that year in '67, people would look forward to the drum solo so they would stay on the floor. But I didn't want to just go into a random drum solo just to exhibit my chops. You know what I mean by that. Just play a lot of exercises, you know. I figured out a way to come up with rhythms so they wouldn't leave, you know. Even like this. And then it gets sticks. I didn't do that because naturally, what are they going to dance to if you do that? You know, that's no incentive for keeping them on the dance floor. And that was another thing my mentors taught me. Keep the dancers on the dance floor, you know. Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Miles Davis, Monk, Duke Ellington, of course. As far as back as you want to go, Ox Foster, Jelly Roll Morton, King Oliver, Buddy Bolden, whatever. Of course, I named a lot of guys from New Orleans, you know. That's another thing I want to say, you know. Historians always place the origin of this music in Louisiana and New Orleans, or New Orleans, as a lot of you all say. But I happen to make the acquaintance once of an older gentleman who was a historian, and he told me, he said, listen, young man, he said, I want you to understand. He said, wherever we were in the continental United States, there were musicians who were playing this music. Now let me show you something real quick. My palm, right? Kind of resembles the state of Illinois. The Mississippi River is here, okay? They say that jazz left New Orleans, if we're going to use that particular terminology, that jazz left New Orleans, traveled up the Mississippi to Chicago. Not true. The Mississippi is on the western part of Illinois. Chicago is on the eastern part of Illinois by Lake Michigan. So even if we wanted to use that analogy, what would we say? Jazz went up the Mississippi, got off at Alton, Illinois, and took the train to Chicago. And jazz is not a human being. It's just a generic word to describe a certain musical activity engaged in by people. So, realistically speaking, for those of us who are not from Louisiana and New Orleans in particular, we do not play like that. I learned how to play like that because musically speaking, I would be on certain engagements in which they needed those kind of rhythms for the type of songs that they were playing at the time. But Detroit musicians have a certain attitude. Like from Pittsburgh, they have a certain attitude. Philly, Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, you know, Oakland, San Francisco, and what have you. All of these regions, when you really look at them, realistically speaking, there were certain significant, identifiable attitudes that came out of those areas, musically speaking. So that's just another important thing that I want to convey to you. Okay.
You could never guess his nickname is Dr. Professor, could you?